There is a test I think is very important for people to do, and just looking at the story of Shebe right now, being arrested and currently in court and going up and down with everything that's happening, and there was a firearm discharge, whether the firearm is licensed. We're gonna read an article that goes there, but I want to ask you this question: what kind of a person do you influence? You ever thought about that? Right? What kind of a person do you influence? Not only what kind of a person do you influence, what kind of person do you think you influence? Now, if you're not sure, let's do a small little test. When you were in your worst behavior, what kind of advice did you get from that person? These people that follow you. When you were outright being bogus, outright being dubious, what kind of things were the man them saying? You're just a leader for the roadmen. Roadmen are like, gangsters, street people, nothing to look forward to. So when you now test what kind of advice they give, now you know. Because think about this. The kind of people that follow you, if they don't have this question, right? This question. Remember, not long ago, Shebe had an incident where he almost stabbed someone in a gig or something with a huge knife, a scary knife, like butcher knife type of thing. This thing was this big, and he had carried that, and all the way to this event. When he got there, almost stabbed this kid right in front of him. Now, people were saying, mostly by saying people, I mean the people that are his fans, like those core root fans. But what the Nike, those ones with Nike and those tight hats, and right? They were saying, he doesn't care. Yeah, like he's like gangster, like he's hardcore. You're number one. Okay? You run this. He doesn't care. And so they see a situation like that and they say, no, he doesn't care. Now, how do you know what kind of a person you influence? Okay, he doesn't care. The person who really influences you and is a good person to motivate, like that, this is the kind of a person I want to influence, should then ask you the question, should you not care? It's one thing that you don't care. But the kind of a person you influence will not ask, maybe you should care. Okay, fine, we see, maybe whatever happened, you did this. But if you are influencing the right person, they will ask you, maybe you should care. That you have such a careless attitude. Now, the way that you are so casual with that, maybe you should care. And something is wrong because you don't care. That's when you know you are influencing the right kind of a person. The kind of a person that asks, maybe you should. Because that's concerning. So when you are outright being diabolical, there's some people, some influencers who said nonsense. Like you've made videos that were outright rubbish. Like you were talking nonsense at the highest level. And they were in the comments. What were they saying? Like when you were talking rubbish, like if you don't think you've never taught rubbish, then you you are no different to your audience. You don't care, but then unfortunately you do not have people that are going to ask, maybe you should care. So if you don't think you've ever made rubbish video, you are outright the same with your audience. That's the worst place to be. And that's what I think Shebesh's problem is. He influences the wrong kind of people. He influences, like when he was at the courthouse, they wanted to get in at all cost. And I guess there were people inside. The court was full. Yeah, like, have you ever attended a bail hearing? Of course the court is going to be full. There are people who are there way before you. But they didn't want to hear nothing. They wanted to fill the courthouse. The courthouse is not a... The aim is not to fill up the courthouse. It's that everyone who's supposed to be in the courtroom is there. But anyways, what kind of people do you influence? You know you influence the right kind of people because they have a question. Maybe you should care. Now we know you don't, but maybe you should. That's when you know you are influencing the right kind of people. And why does it matter that we influence the right kind of people? Because you will never have this type of situations. Things happen, yes, but in general, you're just not always going to be finding yourself in this type of situations where someone said, hey, you see, if you had cared before, this wouldn't happen. That's how you know Shebe has not the right kind of an influence, or is not influenced the right kind of people, because it doesn't look like anybody asked the question, do you care? And if you don't, maybe you should. There's an article that came out speaking about this whole thing right now, and it states that the 30-year-old musician from Mpombo made a brief appearance in court for bail application. The case against the musician, better known as Shebeshxt, has since once Ratata been postponed. The defense added more charges. Basically, they added new charges, okay, after the whole thing started up. This matter will continue on the 27th, so tomorrow, in the Polokwane Magistrate Court. The 30-year-old musician briefly appeared. They like repeating statements. This high-profile case stems from an alleged road rage incident which happened in October, where he is facing 3 counts of attempted murder. That's a serious charge. Negligent disfire of a firearm, robbery, aggravated with aggravation circumstances, 2 counts of assault with an attempt to cause grievous bodily harm. You can go to jail for that alone. Possession of an unlicensed firearm, with that alone, that's some serious time. We're talking 15 to 20 plus with that. But you see, if we start to ask the question, or if we have people ask the question, shouldn't you care? Now, how do we know we have the right kind of influence and we are influencing the right kind of people? I'll give you a story that actually shows you an example of this. There's a story of Rehoboam. He got advice from older generation people, and they kind of try to advise him, steer him into the right direction. He didn't listen to that advice. Instead, he listened to the advice of people of his age group. He listened to advice of people that were a little bit out there, a little bit too much, maybe a little bit like him. Nobody was asking the question, are you sure you don't want to care? Because once someone asks you that, it tells you that it says something. When a person you influence has that question, it means that they have something to look forward to. Now, what kind of a person does not have that question? It's a person who doesn't have anything to look forward to. They don't have that question because it's not part of the framework for what they're working with. You check. What they're working with, it's offline. So that question, it's not part of the curriculum over there. But the kind of a person that has that question is a person who has something to look forward to. And so this person will ask that question because they got tomorrow to live for. But then when you are influencing someone that does not know or see anything to look forward to, boom, what happens? They don't have that question. Life. We are chopping this thing. Chop this life, my G. Why? Because it's the advice of your peers. Like I mentioned, Rehoboam situation shows you that. First Kings, okay? First Kings, chapter number 12, verse number 7, it says, and they replied, if you will be a servant to these people and serve them this day, and if you will respond by speaking kind words to them, okay, so the kind of person that you are, basically, they will be your servants forever. So how you come off, they give back what you give to them. And then it says, but Rehoboam rejected the advice of the elders. Instead, he consulted the young man who had grown up with him and served him. The mandem was more inclined with the mandems that are his age. Wants to be bothered by the old people over there. Rehoboam was like, hey, you know what? I think my generation knows better than y'all. And listened to the wrong kind of advice. The advice of the elders did not stand a chance. Why? The kind of a person you influences tells you whether you have something to look forward to or you are just living today. And looking forward to something doesn't mean that you have this big goal, you have this big, amazing plan for your life. No. Having something that we look forward to just means that I have responsibility that I deem myself. I have responsibilities that I deem I must fulfill tomorrow. I must fulfill next week. I must fulfill next month. So as a result, I'm careful about how I conduct myself out there. Why? Because the kind of advice I'm listening to. And how do you know? Listen to the questions they ask when you know very well I was misbehaving here. Unfortunately, Shebe might be influencing the wrong kind of people because they do not ask. But are you sure you don't want to care? Okay, we see you don't. Now we can do the very same test ourselves individually. We can go back and say, what kind of people do I influence? When I was out talking nonsense, like what kind of, you see, we all have that scale of being able to determine. I know what I was saying was outright chaos. What was I talking about? If you don't, you may find yourself exactly the place where Rehoboam was, taking bad advice from people because them like you have no experience to know what kind of people do you influence.